to the Bodhisattva way of life. Well, in Buddhism, Bodhisattva is a being who has vowed to postpone his entry into nirvana until she is able to save all sentient beings. Has taken a vow to be enlightened, supremely enlightened like the Buddha, but not to enter nirvana, not to escape from this cycle of life and death, but to use the fruits of that enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings and to save all sentient beings. So this book has 10 chapters and is broadly divided into 3 phases. One is to arouse the aspiration to develop bodhicitta where it has not arisen before. Bodhicitta is the enlightened mind. When we say reach enlightenment, reach Buddhahood, that is the absolute bodhicitta, it's called. So the first 3 chapters are dealing with how to let this aspiration within you arise. The next 3 chapters deal with, once these aspirations have arisen, how do you see that you don't regress and how you keep to them and you keep going forward. And the last 3 chapters deal with intensifying that mind of bodhicitta. So we are still on the first phase where we are talking about trying to get the attitude of bodhicitta arising within you, which is wisdom and compassion. The first chapter was well-reasoned sort of argument about why bodhicitta is excellent and why we should strive to develop that position in our life and in our being. The second chapter is called confession. And the third chapter is, having done all this, making a commitment to take the bodhisattva vow. So in the second chapter, there are basically 3 concepts that are dealt with. The first few verses till verse 24, and verse 25 was about offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And the main reasoning there is that if you are going to take such a supreme vow of liberating all sentient beings, then you need to gather merit. Merit is a concept in Buddhism which sort of says that through your actions and through your aspirations, you are preparing yourself to receive the dharma. So for those who don't have merit, sometimes they never get a chance to even learn about the existence of the Buddha, or let alone his teachings. So that is a sort of fruit of having gained merit due to the good deeds you may have done, the aspirations you followed, the attempts you made, and so on. So the first part of this chapter, up to verse 25, was dealing with making offerings and why they are important, what is the nature of offering, with what motivation they should be done, and so on. Who is the object of receiving these offerings? Do the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas really need these offerings from us? They have no needs, then why are we offering, and so on. All this is dealt with up to to verse 25. Verse 26 is the verse in which Shantideva takes refuge in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. So that deals, it's just a simple refuge prayer, but in the commentary that we are studying, it explains the significance of refuge, why refuge is important, why is it the key aspect of entering the Buddhist way, what is it that distinguishes those who have taken refuge from those who haven't taken refuge, and so on. And finally, we come to the third part, which is confession. And this is to understand that, again, if you are taking such a supreme vow of saving all sentient beings, and then you have taken refuge to go to the Buddha, the Dharma and Sangha, especially the Buddha and therefore his Dharma, then you have to admit to yourself that over the years, all your life up to this point, when you are committing to take refuge in the Dharma, you have obviously violated many of the principles, precepts, ideas, value systems of that Dharma. You may have taken life inadvertently, you may have abused people, you may have behaved in an unethical manner. So you cannot just forget all that, it just doesn't come to a full point, and then you start afresh. At least what is needed is to express that you have done these things, that you regret them, and so on and so forth. So confession here is not like the Christian confession, because there is no supreme being, no God, who can forgive you, or through His grace your sins are absolved, or anything of that sort. Here confession is to express regret, and the Buddhas and Buddhas are invoked as witnesses for two reasons. One, as witnesses, that you are saying this and making the commitment not to do these things again to these superior beings, and you are invoking them as witnesses. And secondly, asking for their blessings, that they help you with their blessings to be firm in your resolve not to do these things again, and so on and so forth. So this whole section on confession is from verse 27 to verse 65. So now, can we have a long shot, John, of this table? As you can see, we have set up this confessional booths over here with plexiglass. So, which of you would like to step forward and make your confession to me first? I don't know whether you can see the little transparent cubicles. So you could just say, Aspi, forgive me for I have sinned. Okay. Nobody wants to do that, so we will start with verse 27. So let me just read. It's a little boring chapter, I must admit. So one needs to just make a little joke now and then. So you are all welcome to chip in. Because you see, as I was saying last time, this whole chapter, in fact, because Shantideva is in Nalanda, and that was being the sort of influence and influencing Tibetan tradition, this sort of resonates more with the culture of that place, the culture of Tibetans and the Buddhists of those times, the Mahayana Buddhists of those times. So there's nothing much really to explain, but I have marked a few things in the commentary which are especially inspiring and amplify what Shantideva is trying to say here. And verse 27 says, to the perfect Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in all directions wherever they may reside, to them who are the sovereigns of great mercy, I press my palms together, praying thus. Now here again, you can see that the language is little deviating a bit from the actual philosophy. Because to say they are the sovereigns of great mercy is like saying, yeah, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have mercy on me, forgive me. It's almost like the way we look at confession in other religions. And in Christianity, of course, it's a special position. It has a special place. So now, here you can see that for poetic reasons and cultural reasons, he is referring to them as sovereigns of great mercy, which philosophically you could sort of say, hey, hello, what mercy are you talking about? Who can, because you see, there was a case, I mentioned Devadatta. Devadatta, who was a cousin of the Buddha, who actually tried to kill the Buddha. When he went into hell, the story goes, he was crying out to the Buddha to save him, and the Buddha could do nothing. The Buddha could not forgive him, the Buddha could not show any mercy, because the Buddha is not omnipotent. He is not a sovereign, omnipotent being, even in his most enlightened state. So Shantideva is now invoking the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and he says, I press my palms together and I pray thus. And you will see that from verse 28 to verse 32, these verses are in inverted commas. That means Shantideva is now confessing to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas whom he has just called upon. So I'll just read, and if you have a question, please interrupt and ask, or I may say a few things, but so the prayer goes, in this and all my other lifetimes, wandering in the round without beginning, that is the cycle of birth and death, without beginning, it's supposed to be beginningless. Blindly I have brought forth wickedness, inciting others to commit the same. So blindly, so if there are three poisons in Buddhism, ignorance, hatred and greed, whatever names you give them, ignorance is the root. So it's out of ignorance that you blindly bring forth wickedness, ignorance about the true nature of your own self. So therefore you hold yourself and your ego and your desires and your possessions as the most precious, and thinking you are really all those things also, and all those things really exist and you really exist, and therefore any slight to you, any insult to you, anything taken away from you becomes a major calamity, and you bring forth wickedness to protect those things. And then you incite others to do the same. He continues, I have taken pleasure in such evil, tricked and overmastered by my ignorance. Now I see the blame of it, and in my heart, O great protectors, I declare it. So now he says, in my heart, I know I have done wrong. So he's declaring it to himself as well as to them. Whatever I have done against the triple gem is Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, against my parents, teachers and the rest, through force of my defilements, by the faculties of body, speech and mind, all the evil I, a sinner, have committed, the sin that clings to me through many evil deeds, all the frightening things that I have caused to be, I openly declare to you, the teachers of the world. Before my evil has been cleansed away, it may be that my death will come to me. So now he's talking about his own death, because we know death can come anytime. And so that, come what may, I might be freed, I pray you quickly grant me your protection. Now, that verse 30, whatever I have done against the triple gem, through my faculties of body, speech and mind, in the commentary there are a number of pages with a number of stories of examples of people who suffered for doing these things against the triple gem. So some of the stories are interesting, but they're far too long and too many of them, but maybe we'll look at one or two of them. And the other thing here is this whole idea of death. So now, earlier, when he was talking of the excellence of Bodhichitta and why it's important to cultivate, and you will see many other later chapters also, he often uses the sort of fear of the various hells and so on. And we've had this discussion whether they are real realms or whether they represent psychological states of mind. When you say, I'm in hell, you are reborn in hell. Well, is hell a real physical realm where you are reborn? Or is it in this cycle of existence that hell is a state of mind? So here you will notice he is using more than the hells. Of course, you fear death because if you have done all these wrong things, you may go to hell. There is that aspect also, there is that implication also. But what he is saying is that that can come anytime. Today I am saying I regret this, but if I have not regretted enough, if I have not taken any antidote to this, if I have not taken any remedial measures, then death may come before or even freed of these or absolved of these sins. And again here the word sin is, again you will say it doesn't resonate with the actual philosophy, but this is more thing that is supposed to touch your heart directly rather than your mind and your intellect. Because we know in Buddhism we don't say sin. There is nothing like sinning against God or sinning against God's law. It is simply, as we saw, skillful actions and unskillful actions of body, speech and mind. So that which brings more suffering is unskillful. That which brings more happiness or reduces suffering is skillful. So when he says sin, he is talking about all the unskillful things he has done, for which he knows there is no escaping the fruits of that karma, the fruits of that action. So So now you see, he's emphasizing this, and he will emphasize death and so on in the next few verses, because all of us have this attitude. Definitely young people, but even some old people. You ask an old man who's say 90 years old, maybe even 98 years old, aren't you at the end of your life, more or less? Would you admit? He says, yeah, I am. Of course, everyone. Then he'll philosophize. Everyone has to die someday. I've lived my full life. I will certainly die one day. So, if you say, what about next year? You think you could die next year? He said, oh, yes, of course, I could die next year. I'm already 98 years old. What about next month? I don't know. What about tonight? No, I don't think tonight. I think till tomorrow I will be alive at least. You see? But what is the evidence of that? On what basis that any one of us can say, of course I will die. All of us are going to die. But will you die tonight? Oh, I don't think tonight. Tonight is like too early. It cannot happen tonight. Look at me, I'm completely okay. I'll wake up tomorrow alive. But we know that this is not logic at all. If anybody can die anytime, then all of us can die anytime at any age. So he's saying, be careful that you take the antidotes for all these negative things that you have done. Because it's not the dying that's the problem, because you are going to be reborn. But you want to take a vow that you will be reborn in a situation where you can help other sentient beings. That you won't be plunged into some rebirths where you can do nothing, and you may not have enough merit even to again encounter the Dharma in the next life. So this is the little aspect of death. Now, so this is his prayer. He's sort of giving us an example of a confession prayer. Because now here, I pray you quickly grant me your protection, the inverted commas close and the quotation is over. So when it comes to confession, there are certain stages. If you analyze these verses. One is, of course, the confession of negative actions. That's the overall thing. The overarching sort of principle here is you confess your negative actions. Then is the visualization of the witnesses of one's confession. So if you are calling the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to witness your regret, to witness your confession, and to seek their blessings and protection, then there is a whole process of visualization, which we saw even when we were talking about doing prostration in offerings. So you visualize other beings, you visualize these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. It's not just a verbal formula that you are repeating. Then there is the confession itself, like this verse is from 27 to 32, where is giving you an example of a confession prayer. Then he says confession has 4 aspects, or rather 4 strengths. The strength of regretting that one has done wrong, the strength of the support, that means of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the strength of the remedial practice. Okay, you have done X, Y, Z negative actions. What is the remedy? What remedial action can you take? Because in some cases you can take remedial action, especially if you have unjustly hurt somebody, cheated somebody, or okay, all that is in the past, but your own regret itself is a strength of remedial practice, and the strength of amendment, that you will not do this in further situations, further similar situations. So these are then explained. He said, for instance, that thing about ignorance, which I mentioned in my sort of talking. What is it that Shantideva says? In this and all his other former lives, while wandering in beginningless samsara, ignorant of what actions were to be adopted and what were to be rejected, disturbed by afflictive emotion, Shantideva admits that he perpetrated 3 kinds of evil deeds. 3 kinds of evil deeds. He performed actions that were evil by their nature, he transgressed the rules of discipline, and he incited others to do the same. So now there is a sort of more elaborate explanation of how ignorance has led him to do all this. Now, that verse 30, so there are a whole lot of stories now over the next 10-12 pages of the commentary, and let me just see which is And again, a lot of it is taken from the Uttara Tantra Shastra, which is the one which talks about Buddhahood, Buddha nature, and so on. And so, for instance, Maitreya, who is the future Buddha, has said in the Uttara Tantra, how can freedom come to one who hates the Dharma? So, there was this great adept, Kher Gangpa. Now see, these are all Tibetan stories. You have to remember that Shantideva's text was used very widely in Tibet, and we saw that story right in the beginning, how it was that Patrul Rinpoche would go from monastery to monastery and in a non-sectarian manner teach this text. So this great Tibetan adept was tormented by the powerful sensation of his body being pierced by the white letter A. A, down in Tibetan it will be like our Devanagari. They took a lot from our script. So of keeping, so this was the fully ripened result, he himself said, of keeping the money a benefactor had given him to recite the Astasasrika, that is the Wisdom Sutra, the Pranya Paramita Sutra, in 8,000 verses. It is said that stealing the property of the Sangha, wherever it may be, and especially the provisions directly donated to it, constitutes a grave fault. So, this particular practitioner, who was a monk, who was an adept in some monastery, was given money to recite this sutra, like the Brahmins and the Pandits do even in Hinduism. So you pay money and you say, okay, now recite this 100 times for me. So this person took the money and pocketed it and never did that puja. So, in short, it is said in the sutras that to steal or traffic the property, great or small, of the Sangha, or to appropriate it by dishonest means, cannot be purified even by confession and will surely lead to rebirth in the hell realms. Now,
Aspi, there is a slight echo, the sound, there is a slight disturbance.
Is everybody getting that? Dominic, you are muted.
Yeah, okay. Maybe just... No, it is muffled.
Muffled, okay. Just increase the volume in the camera. Is this better?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. So, I was thinking when I was reading this that we could apply this to modern times also. It doesn't have to be only monastery. I mean, so many of us are working in NGOs, and we do know of cases where money can be used in very different ways from the original intent of the donor, or even the original intent of the people who found and run the NGO. So, to steal or traffic the property of the Sangha could be of any charitable organization, or even embezzlement in a business firm. The Sangha's property, now these are the verses. The Sangha's property is like diamonds. The Sangha's property is like poison. But though for poison there is an antidote, stealing the Sangha's good, for that there is no remedy. So, poison in the sense, if you take it, you're not supposed to take it for yourself, it's for the Sangha. Then there is a story about certain people who, after using the earthen vessels of the Sangha, were reborn in the hell of a cooking pot. So, you're not supposed to, monks are cooking and using those vessels. You flick those vessels and cook your goat in it, and make some beef curry or something like that. Then you are supposed to go to the hell of a cooking pot. So you'll be boiling all the time and not getting cooked. Or to keep the summer food of the Sangha for the winter or reverse. Now this is also a little complicated because it's not like you're not stealing from the Sangha. You are in charge of using the provisions for making food for the monks. And you say, look, I'll be a little stingy in summer because who knows in winter what happens, whether we'll get food easily or not. So let's hoard a little bit for the winter. You're not even hoarding it for yourself. But I suppose there is this thing behind it. And I think definitely one thing is that you're supposed to be living in the present moment. You don't do such long-term planning and, hoarding and so on. So I guess that is also one aspect of it. And then it is said in the Vinaya that if one fouls the wall and pillars of the monastic assembly hall with spittle or nasal discharge, one will be reborn in the ephemeral hell of a wall or a pillar. You will come in your next life as a wall, maybe Trump's wall, who knows, So, so that's it. Anyway, so all these stories are there. Then about what? Then another fellow who embezzled the belongings of the monks and what happened to him, and a bursar in the monastery for what did he do? So somebody had offered the monks some offering. The monks were given an offering which they entrusted to the monastery bursar. So I guess he's the treasurer, like who keeps the money. Later, when the alms offerings had failed, the monks asked the bursar if he had sold the jewels. The bursar flew into a rage. He told them to eat their own shit and said that the jewels had been given to him alone and not to the monastic community. Owing to this state of affairs, the monastic community had no option but to disband, each one going off by himself. As a result of such a deed, the monastic bursar fell directly into the great hell and for 91 kalpas, 91 eons, was engulfed in vomit. So, these are all the various stories about a yogi and he was burning and what happened and why he did that. So I won't go into all this. So there was this yogi who is suffering because of his past karma. Okay, and he is confronted by a hungry ghost, the preta. So for a brief moment, the yogi cultivated loving kindness toward the preta, who pressing his palms together said, "Are you not my mother? Come back to me." So the yogi is telling that hungry ghost. And like he was feeling sad and Now as the preta was recounting his story, most of the bystanders who had formerly been his students began to weep. It is in the light of such tales that one should understand the meaning of the Buddha's advice that the property of the Sangha should be thought of as an ulcerated sore. So now I'll just skip all this part and we have finished with verse 32. And I've talked about. So in terms of death coming at any time, Nagarjuna verse in one of his shastras, life flickers in the flurries of 1,000 ills, more fragile than the bubbles on a stream. In sleep, each breath departs and is again drawn in. How wondrous that we wake up living still. So, as the Tibetans say, you breathe out, who knows whether you will next breathe in. Every breath that you take outward, you don't know whether it will be followed by an inward breath. Life is so uncertain. And so now let's continue with the reading of the verses. So 33 says, the wanton, now this is Shantideva speaking to us and the monks. The wanton lord of death we can't predict. And life's tasks done or still to do we cannot say. We cannot stay. So you cannot say, I had to complete this, my novel is incomplete, my symphony is unfinished. You have to go when it's that the lord of death comes. And whether ill or well, we cannot trust our lives, our fleeting, momentary lives. And we must pass away forsaking all. But I, devoid of understanding, have for sake of friend and foe alike, provoked and brought about so many evils. So, he says, in order to get the better of his enemies, he has committed many evils through attachment and aversion, killing, stealing, and so on. And it has all been so pointless. So now he's looking back and saying, for even if he has failed to overcome them, his enemies will die in any case and cease to exist. Why are we trying to destroy our enemies Any case like us, they are going to die one day. We don't have to kill them. We don't have to do anything. Whether friends or enemies, all are going to die. Even if he is successful in guarding and caring for his friends and loved ones, nothing is achieved. They too will vanish in death. So you may say, I am protecting my friend and I am doing this, I am doing that for my family, but all is going to end in death. And he himself will die and cease to be. The entire universe with its continents, mountains, with all the beings that it contains, friendly, hostile or indifferent, be they as high-ranking as the heavens, as strong as thunder, as rich as the Nagas, as beautiful as the gods, as fascinating as rainbows, all is destined to destruction. So he says in the next verse, so I'll continue. My enemies at length will cease to be, my friends and I myself will cease to be, and all is likewise destined for destruction. All that I possess and use is like the fleeting vision of a dream. It fades into the realms of memory, and fading will be seen no more. So if you dream tonight that you have won whatever the Irish sweepstakes, you won million Mediterranean South Coast, you're on the Riviera, having a great time and spending money and all the beautiful champagne and wine of that region you're drinking and enjoying yourself. When you wake up in the morning, you may feel a bit nice, but there is nothing. You realize it's just a dream. So Shantideva says that everything done in the name of business, lands, wealth, honor, renown, food and clothes, everything that was wanted and experienced, all is now no more than a memory. This I did and this was done to me. Everything that has passed and no longer exists will never be seen again. It can bring no active benefit or harm. It is pointless to engage in action because of it. So just think of it. If you did have that dream last night or any other dream, what is the difference today between the dream and all your life up to yesterday? All your life from your birth till yesterday, till the previous moment, before I uttered the word moment, is just like a dream, it's just memory. Just as last night's dream. Then are we to keep on engaging in action and fighting for those things which are going to finish, headed for destruction, are impermanent? One of the 4 seals of Buddhism, impermanence. Then he says, even in the course of the present existence, so many people whom we have liked or disliked have passed away. In so doing, they also are now no more than memories, unable to help or harm us in the slightest way. This being so, it might be tempting to think that the same applies to the evil actions perpetrated for their sake. They too are gone and can do no harm. So now the opponent to Shantideva is trying to twist his argument. So if somebody is playing devil's advocate now, he's saying, you are saying everything is a memory, your friends, your enemies, all were memory. The evil actions you did are also now memory. They are gone, they can do no harm. You see, you killed somebody. But what is that? That is a memory now. Just as the dead person is a memory and your dead friend is a memory. This, however, is a mistake. The fully ripened, unbearable effects of all the evil deeds that we have perpetrated through attachment or hatred on account of friend or foe have still to be experienced. Our families have still to be experienced. Our karma is like our shadow. It never goes away, but lies before us as though in wait. And in one of the sutras, the king is being addressed. When the dangerous moment comes, O king, and you must go, you will not be followed by your court, your wealth, your friends. And yet, wherever beings take their birth, their karma dogs them like their shadow. So, That's why he is emphasizing that in view of the fact that all this is impermanent, don't hanker too much and do not definitely commit evil deeds, whether of thought, speech or action of body. There's no point in doing all this evil because that is what will follow you. Your wealth will not come with you, your property will not come, your friends cannot help you at the moment of death, your enemies cannot harm you at the moment of death, you are dying anyway. All that will come with you is what you have collected in the mind stream of your consciousness, the karmic imprints which will come with you in the next life. So, never halting night or day, number 39, my life is slipping by, and nothing that has passed can be regained, and what but death could be my destiny. And though there I'll be prostrate upon my bed, and all around the ones I know and love, but I alone shall be the one to feel the cutting of the thread of life. And when the vanguard of the deadly king, Yama's serfs, have come and gripped me, what help to me will be my friends or kin. For only goodness gained in life will help me. This, alas, is what I have shrugged away. So just as your evil deeds will follow you, so will your good deeds. But alas, whatever good deeds I have done or I have not done, I have shrugged those away. I never took that as important. So, O protectors, I so little heeding had hardly guessed at horror such as this, and all for this brief transient existence have gathered so much evil to myself. Such a small life, short life, and how much evil have I gathered in that short life. The day they take him to the scaffold, where his body will be torn and butchered, the man is going to be hanged, a man is changed, transfigured by his fear, his mouth is dry, his eyes start from his brow, his eyes roll up, the whites of the eyes show. If so, then how will be my misery when stricken down, beside myself with fear, I see the fiend, the messenger of death, who turns on me his fell and dreadful gaze. Who can save me, who can protect me from this horror, from this frightful dread? And then I'll search the four directions, seeking help with panic-stricken eyes. So here there is another verse from that same sutra, Rajavavadaka Sutra. I'll read it, it's good because he says, see, every wanderer must die. On your deathbed you will lie, just a little life remaining, fearful at death's servants and despairing. Now your panting breath will cease, your nostrils flare, and in your gaping mouth your teeth are bare. All around you, your father, mother, son and daughter, sister, brother, each to each they will declare, all is wealth we will now share. So already before you are dead, some people might be planning how to share your wealth. And you will cry, father, mother, son, alas, you cry. But only in the dharma does there lie protection. There is no helping grace, no other refuge, no friendly place. When this moment comes, great king, the dharma is the only thing to shield and to protect you. It's your teacher and your home. So only this will take you forward, will come with you. So in verse 47 he says, from this day forth I go for refuge to Buddhas, guardians of wandering beings, who labor for the good of all that lives, those mighty ones who scatter every fear. So,
can I ask a question, Aspi?
Sure. Who's speaking? Yeah.
Aspi, I was just wondering when you're talking, I just wanted to ask, what engenders evil or altruism? Is that tendency karmic in nature?
In the ultimate analysis, he would answer yes. Karmic in the sense, it's a conditioned phenomena. It's your conditioning. So it all stems from the affliction of ignorance, hatred or greed. Hatred and greed arise from the ignorance about the true nature of yourself and the true nature of reality. So from there, you have started doing actions, but you have been doing these actions, and this ignorance is there from millions of previous lifetimes. So when we say that it's conditioned, we don't mean just conditioned from birth, because your parents told you when you were 3, you have to be a successful person. Not all that sort of conditioning. Sorry. So it is more conditioning from previous lifetime, which means, of course, karmic imprints that have come from there through previous unskillful actions. So from there arises this conditioning, and once but in spite of this conditioning, this in spite of all the sort of mud around that gem of Buddha nature which is within you, sometimes there is a glimpse, that thing that was about like a lightning striking in a dark night, and you get a glimpse of everything. That sort of allows you to realize, and then because of your previous merit, encountering a teacher, encountering the Dharma, the idea of altruism will come as an antidote. That these afflictions are causing me suffering, then I have to have antidote for that, and I have to now train my mind, which is meditation, to be habituated to altruism, to helping others, rather than being jealous, being hateful or whatever of others. But first starts the affliction, because that is coming from many conditioned previous lifetimes. So, because even altruism and even unskillful actions and the afflictions are all compounded phenomena. They arise out of causes and conditions. The root cause, they say, is ignorance. And that is the, yeah.
Does it mean that you are not responsible yourself?
No, explain that, come again.
So I mean, if the karmic imprint is responsible for, whether you are altruistic or not.
No, I'm saying, she was asking where do these two aspects arise? How does, what was the, altruism and what else you said? Unskillful, huh? Evil. Yeah, so evil here is unskillful actions. Where do they come from? Everything proceeds from the mind. That is one thing, first of all. The Buddha says clearly in the first verse of the Dhammapad, everything starts with the mind. So your mind has come from previous lifetime to lifetime. Your mind stream is continuous and continuing. So it has come with afflictive emotions, that is to say, the seeds of suffering already there. And as he says, blindly, out of my ignorance, misdirected by my ignorance, I protected what I thought was my real self and my possessions and my desires, and I wanted to further those desires, and I did evil actions. And as I did evil actions, I have to reap the fruits of those actions. Now, this would never end. This would never end if that Buddha nature was not there. If there was something which is, say, a divine spark, even if you don't accept Buddha nature, Buddhism, talk about Hinduism, talk about Christianity, if there was something spiritual, holy, which was there, if it was not there within you, then it would be an endless cycle of unskillful actions, followed by more negative fruits and more suffering, and that causing even more. But everyone, there is this. And in some, because of merit created through, again, good actions in the past life, this sometimes breaks through. And when it breaks through, the idea of altruism would arise. And then if there is an understanding of ultimate reality, that it is this evil action which are actually causing rebirth, and in different states of mind, then you would say, okay, so that is the beginning. That just as that ignorance is the root, the Buddha nature is also there embedded within you, which also has come from lifetime to lifetime. I mean, I don't think I can answer better than this. Maybe some greater, more. I wouldn't say no. I don't mean somebody more articulate. I mean somebody who has actually gone through meditation through the experience of this, an experiential direct understanding of what I am trying to articulate. So, thank you. So, so then he is calling from verses 48 to 52. He's calling upon different Buddhas. So, Samantabhadra, who is the Buddha of prayer and so on, Manjushri, who is the Bodhisattva, Buddha of wisdom, Avalokiteshvara, who is the Buddha of compassion, Akashagarbha, Shiti. There's this 6 or 8 close Buddhas to Shakyamuni, and Vajrapani, who holds the power of the Buddha, and so on. Formerly your words, so he's talking to all these Buddhas and saying, formerly your words I have transgressed, but now I see these terrors all around. To you indeed I come to help, and pray you swiftly save me from this fear. So again he's emphasizing how mindful one needs to be. For if alarmed by common ills I act according to the doctor's words, what need to speak of when I am constantly brought low by lust and all the other 100 torments, all other 100 other torments. So he says, when you are just ordinarily sick, you have a fever, you have some disease, you alarmed by that, you will follow each and every word of the doctor. You will do exactly what the doctor says. And yet, faced with this big illness and disease, and this great physician, the Buddha, is telling you how to tackle this disease, you are heedless. So what is this, what is there to speak? Where is there any argument that we have to do what the teacher has taught? And then if we discard that, he says in the next word, and if no other remedy exists, no other healing elsewhere is to be found. Then words of the omniscient physician, uprooting every ill and suffering, the thought to turn on him deaf ears is raving folly, wretched and contemptible. If along a small and ordinary cliff I need to pick my way with special care, what need to speak of the immense crevasse that plunges down unnumbered fathoms deep? So you see, when you're walking on a narrow road on a cliff, how carefully you measure your steps, how carefully you place your foot. And that's just a little a ravine into which you might fall. And here you have this whole sort of ravine of hell. And one misstep and you could fall into that. Again he says, what need is there to speak? What argument can I give you? When you yourself are so careful when you're just walking on a narrow mountain path. But on this dangerous path, you are carefree and you're dancing around. Then he's put in it, today at least I shall not die. So rash to lull myself with words like this. He's saying, yes, I admit I'll die, but today I will not die. So you're just being rash, trying to lull yourself into complacency. My dissolution and my hour of death will come upon me ineluctably. So why am I so unafraid? For what escape is there for me? My death will certainly come around. So how can I relax in careless ease? Of life's experience, all seasons past, what's left to me? What now remains? By clinging to what now is there no more, my teacher's precepts I have disobeyed. My span of life and all that it contains, my kith and kin, are all to be abandoned. I must leave them, setting out alone. What grounds are there for telling friend from foe? So when you are at the moment of death, how are you going to distinguish between friend and foe? Because the friend cannot help you and the foe cannot hurt you. And therefore, how can I make sure to rid myself of evil, the only cause of sorrow? This should be my one concern, my thought both night and day. Therefore, all the sins I have committed, blinded in the dark of ignorance, actions evil by their nature or the faults of broken vows, mindfulness of the suffering to come, I join my hands, I prostrate, and all my evils I confess. Now in that verse 63, little explanation is needed. All the sins I have committed, blinded in the dark of ignorance, actions evil by their nature or the faults of broken vows. So, Shantideva explains later on and in the commentary that there are two types of evil actions, who are the actions which are evil by their nature, like killing or stealing, and by their own very nature they are unskillful and they are evil. But there are other actions which can be indirectly evil, like for instance broken vows. So when you break a vow, say like that man who took the money and said that he will do that puja and he didn't do the puja. Now that's not an sort of evil in any sense by itself, not doing puja is not evil. But connected with taking money, and the promise he made to do, so breaking of vows. So, okay, or even if you take monastic vows and then you break those monastic vows. Those are, and you break them, and what you do when you break them may not be evil by nature itself, but because you had taken a vow and now you've broken that vow, it becomes unskillful. So mindful of the suffering to come, I join my palms and ceaselessly prostrate, and all my evils I will now confess directly in the presence of the Buddhas. I pray you guides and guardians of the world to take me as I am, a sinful man, and all these actions, evil as they are, I promise I will never do again. So this ends the chapter here, but but in the commentary, I'm going to just read a few things because, though it's not directly connected to this, so there's always this question of the powers of the Buddha and the 10 strengths of the Buddha. And on many occasions, it is said, oh, Buddha never did miracles, or Buddha, there's no emphasis at all on physical power. So he says that's well, you see, when he says that the Buddha is endowed with 10 strengths, and then he gives a story that when the Buddha went to Kushinagar, he encountered 500 strong men, each one accompanied by a further 500, so 500 times 500. They were engaged in clearing a road, but there was a great rock that they were unable to lift and move aside. The Buddha raised it with the big toe of his right foot, and with his hand he tossed it into the air. Such was the physical strength he inherited from his parents. Through his miraculous power, he reduced the boulder to dust and scattered it in all directions. Then the guy said, but we didn't want you to crush the boulder, we want the boulder on that side, So he says, then on discovering that this was not what the strong men wanted, the Buddha gathered all the dust together again and formed it into the rock just as it was before, setting it in a position where they wanted, out of their way. He did this, it is said, through the power of his meditation or primordial wisdom, which is basically the idea that he understood emptiness completely. So the 10 kinds of strength that the Buddha possesses, it is said. So these are the 10 strengths of the Buddha. To know what is correct and what is incorrect, and all the ripening results of action. To know the different types of beings and their aptitudes and interests. To know all different parts, absorption, and the recollection of past lives. Divine sight and the knowledge of exhaustion of defilement. Such is Buddha's tenfold strength. So now, you can see here, this is all about knowing everything. But he's not omnipotent. He's only omniscient. So that was one thing which was worth reading. So, when it comes to remedial action, they are saying, when you have the antidote, any virtuous action, provided that it is performed in conjunction with the 3 supreme methods, it will act as a purification for negativity. So the 3 supreme methods, so when you are doing a virtuous action, and you are doing a virtuous action, say you say, I will say prayers for this person, or I will help physically this thing or that thing. The 3 supreme methods are as follows. The first is the wish and intention to perform virtuous action in order to make a break with negative behavior. So you make a conscious decision that I am going to do this virtuous action because I want it as an antidote to the negative actions that I did in this regard. The second is to maintain in the course of the action an attitude of confession of one's misdeeds. So you just don't do the virtuous actions. Even while doing the virtuous, throughout the process, you keep in mind confessing all the time to yourself what is the negative that you did. The third is to dedicate the accumulated merit to the purification of non-virtue. So whenever you do any virtuous action, you accumulate some merit. So you dedicate that merit, not this time to the happiness of all sentient beings, but to dedicate that merit to the purification of that unvirtuous actions you have done earlier. Then again, it's all about death and so on, which goes on and on. And now it ends with a very, where he says, mindfulness of the suffering to come, I pray to you and I will not do this again. The commentary says an interesting thing. There are two kinds of people. Those who hoist aloft the victory banner of the dharma and those by whom the banner of the demons is brought low. The former never commit any faults, whereas the latter commit them, but they purify themselves with confession. So, it's very close sort of distinction. Those who live by the dharma, they never commit any faults. But those who fight the demons may themselves do some mistakes, but they can purify themselves with confession. The fact that negativities can be purified by confession is the one positive aspect. The positive aspect of a negative action is that it can be purified by confession. So the verse says, those who once behaved with negligence but later on assume a careful mien are handsome like the clear, unclouded moon, like Nanda and Angulimal, Ajatashatru and Udayana. Now I don't know the story of Nanda and Udayana, but I do know the story of Angulimal and Ajatashatru. So Angulimal was this killer who had vowed to kill 1001 people, and he used to cut off a finger and make a necklace of fingers. So he used to wear that, and he had collected 1000 fingers. Only one finger he needed to kill the last one to fulfill his vow. So he was a dacoit, he was an evil person, and as he was walking down the street, he saw the Buddha ahead of him, walking. So he thought, good victim, now this will be the 1001st guy. So he tried walking faster, but somehow he couldn't reach Buddha only. The faster he walked, Buddha seemed away and away, but Buddha was walking at his normal pace. So he started running, and finally he got frustrated and said, hey, you, stop! So the Buddha turned around and said, I stopped long ago, when are you going to stop? And this phrase from the Buddha actually stopped him in his tracks, and there was an epiphany. He fell on his knees and he became a monk. He took refuge in the Buddha and Dharma. That time there was no refuge in the Sangha, because the Sangha was not really, the monks, but you only took that time refuge in Buddha and Dharma when the Buddha was alive. And so that is the story of Angulimal. But again, when you look at his whole story, you find that he also went to hell. Though later on he was redeemed, considering there is no eternal hell in Buddhism. And Ajatashatru, it's an interesting story. So he was the son of Bimbisara, and queen's name was Vaidehi. So Bimbisara and Vaidehi, son was Ajatashatru. Now the story of his birth was that they were not getting a child, at least a male heir to the throne. So they were the king and queen of Magadha. And they called some hermit or some wise person and asked him, what should we do? We are not getting a male son, we are not getting a son, and we are getting older. So he said, don't worry. Your son who is going to be born very soon, and right now he's a hermit doing tapasya, he's doing penance in this forest. But he is going to be passing away from his body very soon, and then he will be born to you as a son. So this king, Bimbisara, said, can we not speed up the process a little bit? What if we kill this fellow in the forest? Then my son will be born immediately. So the hermit and all other spiritual advisors said, don't do this. You cannot interfere like this with the whole cycle of birth and death and karma. And that person is an enlightened person, and your son will be born as him. So, you're very lucky, just wait. So he wouldn't listen, and he got more and more impatient. And he sent a gang of soldiers or bandits, whatever, to kill that hermit. And the hermit died and cursed the king while dying. And sure enough, Ajatashatru was that hermit born to the king. And he had this sort of intense hatred for his father right from the beginning. Because, karmically, he had been killed to be born there. So he tried many things, and finally, that Devadatta, remember I said the cousin of the Buddha who tried to kill him, he was trying to become the leader of the Sangha. And Buddha had spurned him, saying, I know your real intention, I will never make you the leader of this Buddha. Because Devadatta said, now you are getting old, don't you think you should hand over to somebody, maybe somebody like me, I'm young, I can help. So Buddha had completely, so Devadatta started filling Ajatashatru's ears, saying, I can help you to get the throne, and because he felt if Ajatashatru becomes the king, then he will become the main advisor and Buddha will be sidelined and so on. So he made a plan saying, you'll kill your king and your mother, you will become. So then the gang of courtiers who was with Ajatashatru spoke to them and said, look, I want to have the throne, I can't wait anymore. This king, my mother and father can't do anything. So the courtiers said, no, if you overthrow the king, we don't mind. There are many instances in history where sons have killed their father to get the kingship. But there is no case in history in our culture where a son has killed his mother, and we will not allow you to kill your mother. And so now the mother and the king were great disciples of the Buddha. So then what Ajatashatru did was, since the courtiers were against him, then if he kills both of them, so he imprisoned them. And he imprisoned them and made a rule that no food will be given, they will be starved and they will die of starvation. So, and they were imprisoned separately, and that was the rule for the king, not for the mother. Mother could eat, but she was imprisoned. So what the mother started doing was, she requested for, food which had a lot of ghee in it and things like that, and sandalwood and so on. And she would apply paste of those things on her body. And then say, I want to go and meet my husband, and they would let her go. And he would lick off that ghee and all that from her body to get nutrition. So he was not dying. And finally, Ajatashatru discovered this is what is happening. So he prohibited those visits. And I think the king died and Ajatashatru became king. But then Ajatashatru's whole body was filled with some sort of boils and disease, which nobody could cure in that realm. There was no physician there. So finally, they asked, somebody said, why don't you get the Buddha? So Ajatashatru went and I think he apologized to the Buddha, and Buddha sent his physician and he was cured. And then you see there is this conversation between the queen and the Buddha. And the queen asks the Buddha and says, look, I can understand why my husband and I went through all this. Because we did many evil deeds in our in our lifetime as king and queen. And also, of course, we killed this hermit who came back as a son. So I can understand all this karma. You are teaching karma, I understand all this, that why we are suffering. But what did you do? What was your past karma that your cousin Devadatta got Ajatashatru to do this? Plus, he tried to kill you. You got injured when he threw that boulder on you, and so on. What was your thing? So he says, well, then there is some sort of a scene in which the Buddha opens his mouth and shows her the whole cosmos. It's a bit like the Krishna story in Bhagavad Gita, I think. It is at least, it has a resonance or echo of that. So, and what he tells her basically is that, you see, in a previous lifetime, Devadatta was the teacher and I was his student. And now in this lifetime, I am the teacher and he is born as the student. And he cannot digest that. Because in this lifetime, I have achieved more than he had achieved in that lifetime, or something like that. So that sort of is the whole story of Ajatasattu. And there are many other small stories connected to all this. So that's what he is saying. So these are people, Angulimal, who were previously doing evil, but who reformed themselves. So it's like the saying we have, no? What is it? Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. So when Angulimal becomes a saint, of course he has a past as a sinner, and every saint has a future. And every sinner has a future. So we'll stop here, and some questions if anyone has. Okay, no questions, no confessions. So now I think today is Friday. I have booked my ticket to go back to Goa for Thursday, 15th. 15th I'll be taking my flight back to Goa. So Friday we can have a meeting in Goa, and this Tuesday also is possible from Bombay. So we can continue with that little discussion we were having on the 10 precepts on Tuesday. And then Friday we will take the 3rd chapter of this book. Is that okay? Next Tuesday and Friday.
So Tuesday we meet and then Friday.
Yeah. But Saturday, tomorrow and Sunday I am in Pune, and Monday I am coming back to Bombay. Tuesday, Wednesday in Bombay, and Thursday I fly to Goa.
Aspi, Sharmila had a question.
I didn't hear that. Sorry, go ahead, Sharmila.
No, she has here seat and chair.
Oh, 1 second. Just a sec. No, Sharmila, I am not sure which version of the refuge prayer you are referring to. So you say, I go for refuge to the triple gem, I confess all negativities individually. This, does the second line refer to this confession chapter? No, it refers to confession in general, but this chapter is like a condensation of all the ideas in Buddhism about confession from Shantideva's point of view. Now, I am sure there are other commentators, other scholars, writers, sages who have also talked about confession, but it would not diverge very much from this chapter, because he has taken every aspect of confession and explained it. But this particular prayer, because normally one doesn't say, I go for refuge to the triple gem, unless there is a prayer which is a longer prayer in which these are 2 lines. Because the refuge is very clear, I go for refuge to the Buddha, I go for refuge to the Dhamma, I go for refuge to the Sangha. This is how we say it. Yes, it is to the triple gem. And then we take the 5 precepts, or the 10 positive precepts, which we were studying last time. And confession is, again, also you see there is the 7-fold prayer or 7-limbed prayer. which also, I think when we come to the next chapter, just to say, I think when we come to the next chapter on commitment, confession is done. Then the 7-limb prayer is a sort of commitment prayer, where you first rejoice in virtue, then you request the Buddha to turn the wheel of Dharma, then you pray that the Buddhas remain, then you dedicate, then you do actual mind training. So the thing is, in the 7-limb prayer, the 7-limb puja, I think there is one aspect of the 7 is confession. So I'm not sure which prayer you are exactly referring to. But I mean, it is referring to confession, and this chapter is all about confession. Some problem here. This is a 4-line prayer from the blaze of non-dual Bodhichitta. I am sorry, I don't know this prayer. I mean, maybe I know it in another name or something, but this English version, the title, I don't know. You are going to type the next lines? You have said the next lines being? Yeah, but that I read. The next lines being, and she's going to type. She said, okay. So this is from that 7-limb puja. That is the first part. I rejoice in the virtue. Rejoicing in the virtue. Okay. Was this prayer taught to you by Geshe Dorje Damdul? Okay, I have the book which you all used, that prayer book, which he has published, but it's not here, it's in Himachal. So maybe Blaze of Non... Okay, that... Okay. Anyway, I'll check it out. I'm sure it will be in that book also, that prayer book that I have from his collection. Okay, so I guess any other question? Okay then, see you on Tuesday.